Alright guys, welcome, day 23. I regrettably got a little bit carried away again and did not do any other preparation from the other two nights, and we basically had the same patch, but I kind of just mixed up the scale a little bit and was playing along. So tonight we have, let's see, I think we have Quasar, we have Lamont, we have Cyber Gwen. I don't think I've seen you before. Welcome to the channel. And Marilyn was here. Yeah, so you guys welcome. Kind of a fun little jam. I'm really digging the contact microphone some more with the Eurorack stuff, and I don't know, having a blast with kind of the dirty gritty stuff. And so I think I had talked to Quasar a little bit about maybe doing a kind of bigger rack walkthrough. So I'm willing to do that with you tonight, Quasar. For the rest of you guys who maybe are not huge modular heads, it might not be as enjoyable. So yeah, if you guys have any other questions before I kind of start digging into the patch, I guess as far as for the guys who haven't seen it before, here in Bitwig, I have a drone coming in. Right, and most of this was Eurorack. I have drone, piano tech, which is the electric piano, and the rest of this is wind synth and modal synthesis from the rack. So yeah, I'm obviously playing the instrument here. The instrument is pitch control. Pitch control goes into Bitwig, goes into CV, into the rack, and my little box here that you kind of saw me scraping on is actually a wooden box from a craft store, and it has a contact microphone mounted inside, which is getting fed into the rack for some modal synthesis. So the electric piano sounds real good, and modal synthesis I think also sounds real good. You kind of see me sometimes with the Velcro. So you can do some really cool stuff with the contact microphone. And the other thing I had is the wind synth again. Wind synth is breath tube going into a modular for a wind synth voice. All right. So like I said, I'm gonna kind of get deep into your rack mode here. Quasar, if you had anything in particular that you wanted me to start at, or I'll kind of work my way up from maybe sequencers and... Well, you know what? We can go over the voice first a little bit too, just depending on what you want to see, Quasar. Get some more light going on here. Yeah, so Quasar, the instrument is, in this case, as I'm playing so much of the Eurorack stuff, is mainly just pitch. In, obviously, Piano Tech, I also have velocity and all that too. But yeah, the instrument is mainly a pitch controller for this. All right, so I think we'll... All right, you're down for whatever's convenient, so I'll show you around. In that case, I guess I'll start with my normal wind synth voice here, and let's see, you also ask, how am I selecting which synth voice plays? Yeah. So here in Bitwig, my selected track instrument is my main controller, right? So depending on how I choose my track, it'll obviously route to that guy. On Lambda, yes, this is the exact same setup as last night. Different scale, but same setup because life got in the way. And I got busy making my spaceship. Actually, before we get too much further, I want to show you guys this spaceship a little more. So the spaceship is a scene I'm building up in OBS, which is this guy here, right? And I have a foot pedal down below from Elgato for the Stream Deck, and it has 3 foot pedal switches, and I can use it to zoom in. Right, or the left here, so you can guys see me, right? Or we can go all the way to the right, and we'll get more of the Eurorack. I think in this scene, I want to zoom in a little more here, and I need to figure out how to get my talking head in these kind of views a little better. So yeah, this is working pretty well. I'm pretty happy with it, but I need to figure out the talking head aspect. And as you can kind of see, the background is audio reactive as I talk. I'll play a little bit more with that and kind of integrate my entropy and suns a little more in there so we can kind of do cool stuff. But in the meantime, yeah, we have the warp drive in the back for the spaceship, which is pretty cool. But I wanted to go over the Eurorack stuff, so we'll go over the Eurorack stuff. So the main question was for Quasar is, how do I select which instruments I'm playing? And I can show you here on my desk. I have the little instrument here, but just underneath the desk, I have a keyboard, like an actual typing keyboard, and a mouse with like a little rollout shelf guy for the keyboard and mouse. I don't know, nothing crazy, right? So my hands can kind of go down here, and I can control the mouse very easily from right here, right? So in that case, you'll see me sometimes just go over here and selecting patches and going on with stuff. But the other times I also use the MIDI Fighter Twister, which typically kind of lives where the contact microphone is right now, but he's living here. And it has 16 pots, and of those 16 pots, in the current mode I'm at, the top left one will actually select the track. So as I rotate it, it'll select my track. Then I have track volume and some other things here for the track, as well as my remotes for the track down here if I had it set up in more Bitwig specific stuff. So if I'm back over here in Bitwig, I can literally just take my... Let's try and get it in frame for you. I can take my knob right here and move it back and forth, and I can select between all sorts of stuff here. And so I can select tracks that way, and I can also do mixing and stuff with the MIDI Fighter Twister, and a lot with track remotes, depending on what I'm doing, right? So the mouse clicking on tracks, which will select where my instrument goes, or with the MIDI Fighter Twister, I'm using the knob to kind of select tracks kind of quick. Also, hidden underneath my head, I have a Stream Deck here. And the Stream Deck, I can control scenes, but I also have a slot record mode here. So if I push the middle button here, it'll record the clip 1 of whatever track I'm in, and stop clip 1 on the beat 1 of the next measure, right? So you'll see me up here using this to come in and out of clips that I'm recording. And then down below, I had been setting up my triple foot pedal down there that I'm using for scene controls right now in the spaceship to record clips as well, but I'm going to keep that, I think, as spaceship control, and I might end up getting 2 of the 3 button pedals, and I have one for DAW control and one from OBS control, but we'll kind of see how it plays out. I'm not exactly sure yet. All right, so I'm selecting tracks like that for Bitwig, and Bitwig is doing all the mixing, and that is because in the rack, down here in the very bottom, I have the ES9, and the ES9 is my primary audio interface for all the things. I have the music computer and the streaming computer as 2 separate computers. The streaming computer, the music computer runs Bitwig and has ES9 as the audio interface, and will do all the mixing and all that in the DAW. And that'll be sent out via SPDIF from the ES9 into a little Nook computer kind of hidden underneath my desk as well. And that's the one running OBS. And it just takes one stereo input from the ES9 and sends it out. Kind of interesting also from the ES9, I have a stereo pair going up to an output bus from Bafaco. And that actually gets sent down kind of just out of frame here. I have a little knob that'll go between 3 headphone outputs, or inputs rather, right? So I have one from the ES9, I have one from the streaming computer, and one from the output bus. And that allows me to, usually I just listen to the ES9 output bus, my primary output, but I can sometimes go over to the second one, which is from the output bus. And that'll allow me to do things like the metronome or solo tracks just to that, so I can kind of listen to it as I'm playing while you guys still hear everything. And the third one is, like I said, from the streaming computer, so I can monitor the audio from the streaming computer and make sure it's not like glitched out or like super crazy, right? So that's a little knob down here. I can switch between these 3 outputs. It also has a 1/4 inch out on the 2 output on the ES9 and the output bus, which can get fed into other external gear if I want, and kind of do some routing there. And next to the output bus, I have a 4MS wave recorder. Depending on what I'm doing, the wave recorder will record from the ES9 or from the rack and record things right to SD card. That can be super useful for when I'm not doing very DAW specific things and I want to record it in high quality just right from the rack without having to convert it through the ES9. The 4MS wave recorder. All right, so that's the majority of my mixing is the ES9, the output bus, and then right to the next of it is a Lifeform Systems Interface mixer, and it's a 6-channel mixer with kind of panning control and some send and receive buses and all that kind of stuff. It's a very nice little mixer for when I'm doing very rack-specific things. So I do not have a performance mixer, but I do have a systems interface, which has three main inputs, which I can pan left and right, and then I have 3 mono inputs, and like I said, a couple instrument buses or effects buses and that kind of thing. But that mixer works really well. Along with that, because I do a lot of things in stereo, I do have an ALM stereo sum 4 HP little mixer here, which just takes 4 stereo pairs and puts it down to 1 stereo. And right to the left of that is a Pittsburgh modular Okapi stereo mixer, which has, again, 4 mono inputs with gain and pan control for each of those, with a nice overdrive where I can put things in and put it in the stereo field. That's my primary mixer kind of setup for in the rack. I have a couple other small sub mixers kind of hidden around the system, and a couple not in the rack. Hey Paul, how's it going? The jam went pretty well tonight. I think I did about 15-20 minutes of some kind of darker discordant type stuff. I think it turned out pretty good. If you go back and review it, it turned out pretty good, I think. Otherwise, I am going over with Quasar Music here the rack, since he showed interest on our Discord of kind of seeing what I have in the rack as far as modules. All right, that's the primary mixing, and the next thing is audio input. If I want to record external things, or in this case, my audio for the microphone, I have the Bafaco instrument interface, which is right here, which takes an XLR or 1/4 inch input, and it has gain, and it can also have an envelope follower that comes out of it, and I can change the envelope response on the module. And it's a really clean preamp, I think, and I have a little boom mic coming off, which you can kind of see. That boom mic is going into the instrument interface and then goes right next door to a little graphic EQ from Music Thing Modular. So if I'm like playing bass guitar or something like that, I can kind of change the EQ on the fly before getting into the ES9 just in the rack with some hands-on control. And let's see, as far as the other inputs and outputs, for HP in the top right, I have a Bafaco output, which can do 1/4 inch output from your rack, and also another headphone amp, which I don't use too often now. And it'll probably change out in the future, but it's up there for when I'm using it. And very top left, next to my Bleep Bloop 2000, is a Bafaco input, which will take 1/4 inch input or 1/8 inch input, and bring it up to modular levels. I use a lot of the time to bring in my external gear from my left and bring it in. All right, and I do have ETZ control. I always kind of forget. All right, so Bleep Bloop with the ridiculous splarf switch here. All right, so next to that is the Bafaco 4 HP input module, right? So top left and top right of the big rack has audio input and output for 1/4 inch as options there. Next down from the 4 HP input from Bafaco is this guy right here, which is mutable instrument ears, which is another high impedance input, which I'm using in this case to run my contact microphone. So he's another audio interface, essentially, or audio amplifier as well, because it'll take things like guitar inputs if you want, or any other thing, kind of ramp it up real good. Another use for the 4 HP module from Bafaco is it has a whole lot of gain, so you can put just modular levels in here to the end of the out, and crank up this, and it goes like 400x. gain on there, right? So a lot of gain on there. And then let's see. Down here in my little rack underneath the big rack, I have a couple other little things for audio input. All right, this first module is from DPW, and I think it's just called Pedal VO, right? And it is a send receive pair for 1/4 inch, and I was using this for guitar pedals. I have like a black hole and a couple other effect modules here that take 1/4 inch, so you can do 1/4 inch send and receive via this module. And then right next to it is the molten bypass, which can take an effect and bring it in and bring it out with a button. As far as it's not a send, but it's literally a pass-through effect, right? But what it can do when it's running in the tail mode or whatever you call it is that, like, let's say I have a chorus on here and I'm dry and I enable chorus and I turn it off, right? It'll just cuts off, right? But if you have like a reverb or a delay and I put it on and I play something in a long note and the reverb is hanging out and I turn it off, that reverb tail will still get mixed in. So the molten bypass is super cool for delays and reverbs and that kind of thing, right? And it's right next because I have this DPW for the pedal interface, which can bring in the pedals, and the molten bypass where I can bring that in and out. And then right next to that, I have Timizora and Diva, and Timizora and Diva are from Chaos, and they are the spin chip effects module. But Diva is super cool because you can underclock the module and really slow it down and get some grimy, weird feedbacky stuff. And as well as it has feedback control for how much bass versus treble you put into it, and a send receive loop that is in the feedback loop of the spin algorithm. So you can do some like super weird stuff with Timizora and Diva as far as effects go, right? So it's super cool. You can spend just like so much time with like a simple sound, sending it through Timizora and exploring and finding all sorts of crazy stuff in there. All right, I guess we'll just kind of keep on going down on the little rack here. Next to Timizora, I have a VCMC, right? And if you didn't know what this guy is, it's 8 sliders, 8 buttons, a bunch of CV inputs, and its sole job is to bring your rack modulation into DAWs, right? So I can easily take, like, let's say my breath CV and plug it into VCMC and have DAW control with breath. So I can use that, for instance, to do pigments and have breath control. Or I can bring in LFOs or other modulation guys and bring it in. Or literally just have hands-on control faders that I can assign to things, or buttons that send notes that I can assign things in the DAW. So for instance, I can use it for a global transposition and have, chord changes via the buttons, and then assign these guys to specific functions on a soft synth, and it works really well, right? So VCMC, great module from Bafako. All right, and next to that guy, I have a 8-channel mute. I guess really he's a 6-channel mute. The LED buttons here will basically take the input and the output and do clickless muting and unmuting, which is useful for just like, I use it a lot for like turning on and off clocks or sequencers or something like that. But then down below, it's actually a switch where I'll take one in and switch between the outputs. So I can have like one clock coming in and with one button press send it to 2 different locations back and forth. So super fun. Next to that guy, I have Traffic. Traffic is from Jasmine and Olive Tree, right? And if you haven't seen that guy, he's a very cool module. You basically just have 3 trigger inputs, and you have three CV outputs as well as a trigger sum, and depending on which trigger you trigger, it will select a bank of the 3 knobs, right? So it's very useful when paired with plats, because you can basically set up plats to have 3 CV controls to control like the model and the drum and whatever modulation, and with a monophonic plats module you can totally get like a drum machine type of thing going, and it's super useful. Quasar says he has that one. Yep, love it. I haven't played too much with the weird modes that it has, the groove and the randomization and all that kind of stuff, and then I know it has the water guy that you can put on top. I haven't played with water at all because I have enough sequencers. I haven't had the need to, but Traffic is super fun. Next to him is a stereo triggered sampler from 4MS. He is my go-to quick sampler that I use for most of my things in the rack. It has great ability to slow down patches and do stereo recording, and it's super fun. Yep, if I'm working just in the rack and I need a sampler, 4MS stereo triggered sampler is the guy I use. Next to him, I have the Beehive macro oscillator, which is just the Platts clone, right? So he's an 8 HP version of Platts, and he's great. Paul says that he patched with Traffic once, not married to it since I haven't used it since. Yeah, I used it a lot when I was trying to do things with the stereo trigger sampler and Platts together, because you can kind of like select samples with more than one trigger. So when I have my KeyStep Pro, the KeyStep Pro outputs, I'll feed into Traffic and then get a multitude of CVs out, which is useful. Hey, Wabbit. And George, I'm not sure if I said hi to you yet. I'm sorry if I haven't. Yep, so I'm just doing a full module walkthrough with Quasar here. So if you're not going to be deeply into Eurorack or want to avoid getting deep into Eurorack, maybe don't pay attention here. All right, and then the bottom right is one of, I have, I think, six Pittsburgh modular drum modules from the Safari line, and this one is the Elephant, and the Elephant can do anything from toms to bass drums to weird Rubik's Cube to weird modulated like Mario Brothers style SNES, NES type stuff. Kind of a fun, I don't know, bleep boop kind of drum machine kind of thing that I have down here. I kept it in because you can do a lot of cool stuff with it. Honestly, I think I've told people I don't think I should have tried to do drums in the rack, and I had one at one point had the whole little rack here as a drum machine. But honestly, I think I'd rather just keep drums in the box and keep my drums out of Eurorack. But I do have a couple cool ones that are fun, still kicking around, and I still have all my Pittsburgh modular ones in a box. So, yep, that's all my bottom row now for my little rack here. The final module just being a tip-top power 4 HP. Paul says that the Elephant can do anything Perfect Sphere can do. Yeah. Let's see, Quasar said he picked up a drum field for that reason. Drums in the box. Yeah. I really wish that I had focused not on the drums in Eurorack, but it was a good experience of trying them out, and I can get some cool sounds, but I think I'd rather just make the cool sounds in the box and then sample them and do what I want in there. So, I don't know, still cool. I never really got into the glitchy Eurorack-based generative drum weirdness things that you can do. It's just, I don't know, it's too random for me. And if I'm just doing regular drum stuff, I don't know, I'll get the MPC out or just do it in Easy Drummer or whatever, right? Like, whatever. So still fun, but wasn't worth it for me. All right, going back over to the main rack. And I guess maybe it's worth just explaining how big this rack actually is. So it is 840 HP, split between 5 rows. And it's so big I can't get it all in one frame. But we'll kind of start going down bottom left here. And I have a lot of spaghetti right now from the current patches. Bottom left, I have a planer 2 from IntelliGel. It's a very nice joystick that I really like having because it stays in position when you let go of it. And it also has CV recording, meaning that I can actually record it, play it, hit the button again, and it'll play back that random CV that I just played, which works really well for modulating things and recording kind of custom CV things for what you're doing. You know, works really well. And next to that, I have the Pittsburgh modular touch controller. Sorry, I was hitting my head on the camera, so I'm bringing it up. Yeah, portable it isn't. And the rack is I built custom out of oak. So the damn thing with modules will about kill you. I don't think I can move it safely by myself. I have to have my wife help me, so it's just slightly ridiculous. And then to make it stable on the desk, I actually literally have a ratchet strap going down because it's not very deep, and I'm afraid of it falling over and like crushing one of my babies if they come up and like pull on it. So I literally have it ratchet strapped to the desk. All right, so Pittsburgh modular touch controller. He's right here. He's a very, very cool sequencer. It has 10 stages that you can be split up into the left or the right, and it has 2 rows of CV knobs that you can set. And if you just hold the button and put in a sequence, if you have a clock going to it, it'll just play you back whatever you put into it. And it has simultaneous left output, right output, and A and B, and Y. Y being like your finger position here, up and down. So you can do really cool like triple CV outputs from this thing and do all sorts of crazy stuff. It's not quantized, right? So you have to send it through a quantizer, but we'll get to that with my quantizer preferences here in a minute. But it is such a usable, great sequencer that you can then also put in dual mode. So in dual mode, you can control left and right independently as well. And again, the outputs you can do left, right, or all at the same time always. So it's great. It's super fun and hands-on sequencer. I'll use it a lot of the times when I'm getting into it for sequencing the Symphonian for chord changes, right? So it'll just be like right next to my joystick that I'm using here for hands-on control, and I can come over here and change chords as I go, and that works really well. Other times it has a scan input, and the scan input can take a random envelope or LFO and scan through it. So in this case, it's on square right now. So I'm sending a triangle into it, and it'll just go through the stages. Right, so super cool sequencer. One of my favorites. And hidden beneath all this spaghetti here, I have two Pittsburgh modular micro sequencers, and they are 8-stage sequencers. They can either be sending out quantized note data or just raw CV. So again, they're really awesome for just general use CV sequencing, and they can also do things like clock division and that kind of stuff. One of my favorite sequencers to run like Berlin style plucks through, because it's just so hands-on with the sliders. Pittsburgh modular micro sequencers, 2 of them with the Pittsburgh modular touch controller. Great combo. And of course, I have Metropolix with the expander GX, and this guy is by far one of the most fun sequencers I've played with, especially for Berlin style bed stuff. So great, especially the mod lanes in it. I'm sure all of you know Metropolix, but yep, Metropolix is great. I do not, as far as my clocking goes, right? This is all being tied in through Ableton Link to the DAW, in this case Bitwig, and that is being controlled by, oh my gosh, can I not see it in view? Oh, it's above us. There we go. My main clock source in the rack is a Missing Link 2, which I actually bought off of Luke Synthseeker himself. He used to have this guy, and this Missing Link 2 ties over Wi-Fi to my Bitwig and provides an Ableton Link sync output, which then goes down into my Metropolix. Do I have one huge molt for all the clocks? Yep, so not really, but Ableton Link Missing Link 2 outputs my clock and reset, which then goes down into Metropolix, and Metropolix will have the GX output here, and that'll be my main clocks that I have for the rack. While that doesn't seem like a lot, I also have the ES9, which can do the 8 outputs, and I also have an FH2 from Expert Sleepers that does a lot of MIDI output that is also connected and can do all the extra clocking that I need via MIDI. And yeah, and honestly, most of my stuff have clock dividers and stuff in them already, so I can do a lot of stuff there. And I have a couple other things like the DPW switch and stuff that I'll get to here in a little bit as well. So a lot of clocking options, but I don't have like a PAMS workout or anything like that. I do most of it now via Metropolix, either the gate outputs from the tracks if I'm not doing something particular there, or I'll use the GX here and split it out to these guys over here and use those to drive things, or if I have the KeyStep Pro, I'll use the KeyStep Pro a lot of the times for a trigger sequencer because that's so hands-on and fun to use. All right, and so next in Metropolix, I have the Symphonian. The Symphonian is easily one of my most favorite modules in this rack. Let me get it better in view here. All right, so I'm pretty sure most of you guys know of Symphonian, but if you don't, it is a multi-channel quantizer and chord scale sequencer. That's kind of a mouthful, but I have 3 regular channels up here of quantization. I have a chord output and an arpeggiator. So basically, you have channel 1 I usually have on bass duty. 2 and 3 are oftentimes tied into plucks, and then the cord will get sent out to something like my chainsaw, and then an arpeggiator will go to like rings or something like that, and then I can come up here and sequence chords and select chord tones for each of the channels on a per chord basis. It kind of sounds complicated, but basically if you look here on channel 3, I have root, 3rd, 5th, and 7th, right? So this is your basic 7th chord and all the things, and yeah, it does great. I might be getting behind on the chat here. Let's see. Yep, Paul says Ableton Link definitely makes things easy. And you're talking about PAMs breaking old presets. Yeah, like I said, I've never really had the need for PAMs because of how I do things. I think it would be super useful, but it's just definitely not a module that I've ever got into. Because I had the FH2 first, and the FH2 and the ES9 can do all the things, right? So for me, it was just never necessary. But the Symphonian, on a per chord basis, as you go through each of the chords that you kind of sequence in, you can assign root, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, 11th, 13th, etc. for each of your quantization channels. So you can do some really great things across it. And if you haven't looked in the Symphonian and you need a quantizer and you have just an absolutely atrocious amount of HP to use into it, and you can find one, the Symphonian is the bee's knees of quantizers and is honestly one of my favorite modules in my rack. Highly recommend. Awesome thing. All right, so we'll get into row 2. All right, we'll start with the FH2. Over here, I have the FH2 and a breakout board or a breakout module for MIDI. On top of that, it'll take MIDI input and output. And then down below here, I actually have a custom module that I've created that has the connections here that will run my wind synth, which is my DIY wind synth. You don't see me playing it here, but it's like an electronic woodwind instrument, like an UI, right? But I have the CV scaling and offset guy built into this module here. So when I plug it in, I'll plug my DIY wind controller into the USB of the FH2 and the breath control here, and it'll come out with breath CV here and pitch and other great info here. And then I have the expander here for 8 more CVs. And the FH2 is kind of a powerhouse of CV output from MIDI. Honestly, if I could have more audio outputs from ES9, that would be my preference, but FH2 works really well for MIDI to CV conversion. Yeah, I played it on, I think, a few of the Ninjams. And it's this guy right here who's a little dirty and it's wrapped in cables, etc. But I play it like a clarinet kind of guy, and it has an accelerometer. And the microcontroller in here I programmed for a wind synth, right? And it's great. I dropped it, or it got broke in my drawer the other week, and I broke off the microcontroller's USB port. So I need to resolder it, and possibly replace the microcontroller if I broke too many traces on there. So a little bummed about that. But it's fixable. Yeah, the ES5 will give you more audio outputs, right? But I don't think it's actually audio outputs. I think it's CV outputs from the ES9, I think, right? But either way, I'm on Windows, so I can't use aggregate devices for my audio, right? So my ES9 will be my only audio output. But I think the ES5 will expand 8 more CVs from the ES9. I forget how that works. Either way, though, between my FH2 and from Expert Sleepers and the ES9, I'm pretty covered on my inputs and outputs to the DAW. But yeah, let's see. Oh, I was talking about the FH2. All right, and next to the FH2, I have 2 ornament and crimes. One running hemispheres and one running the standard. Hey, Sean, good to see you. We're doing a module by module walk down of my rack. So, yeah. Two ornament crimes, 1 hemisphere, 1 standard firmware. I kind of hate them because I don't like menu diving, but they are super useful in a pinch when you need that one thing. And it has some interesting modules for like the shift register stuff and all that in the original firmware that I really like. And can do ADSR type stuff if you really need to. But they're kind of sitting there as I don't know, the all-in-one tools that you every once in a while need, right? The distings, if you will. I hate distings, so don't have any in my rack, but they kind of fulfill that need of, oh, I need a random logical module, or I need an extra shift register or something like that. The ornament and crimes fulfill that, but I don't really like them. But hey, boss. Here's a puppy. Oh. All right, so next to the ornament and crimes, I have Zadar, and Zadar is one of my, I guess, go-to and primary envelope controllers, right? And if you are not aware of what Zadar is, he's a vectorized envelope generator with a bunch of stored like vector tables, I guess, and it works super good for anything from ADSR to really weird waveforms, right? So if I just like scroll through some of these waveforms. Right, and these are not like sample based, they're vector based, which means you can go super slow, like hundreds of seconds long or minutes long, and it'll slowly glide between them, and you can do things like change the overall shape of them or skew them one way or the other. And Zadar is super nice. I love Zadar. I also have the expander for it, which brings out 4 triggers for starting the envelopes and also 4 more modulation inputs. So each of the envelopes in Zadar now has 2 inputs that I can modulate different things with, and triggers and outputs for each of them. Zadar, awesome module, my go-to thing for a lot of modulation. Let's see, Sean said he was sneaking in late and we'll have to catch the replay. Yeah, the first 20 minutes, kind of grungy, lovely stuff, I think. You might really like it. And oh, Quasar, no worries. I can go through these. If I'm not done in about 20 minutes, I'll probably get off, but I think we can make good progress here. Let's see. Next to Zadar, we have a Chaos module. Honestly, I forget what kit that was, but it's one of the kits that I soldered together. Is a nice little 3-channel Chaos module. I love the Chaos modules. And then next to that, I have Pet Rock. Pet Rock is a great sequence, a great clock generator for random clocky things that I can feed in there and get random patterns from. Kind of fun to play with. And then next to Pet Rock, I have Oct and the Expander. And so those two together are one of my primary modulation sources. The other primary modulation source that I use in my rack all the time is up here, which has a triple sloths chaos module, which feeds into the wrong vector, the wrong vector space, which does all sorts of crazy interrelated modulation stuff, which is super great. So between the Oct and the wrong vector space, I have tons of modulation outputs. And then those modulation outputs will go oftentimes through Miso here from Tip Top, and Miso is just a offset and attenuator guy. Works really well. Next to that, I have Wogglebug and Maths, these kind of guys, and the VCA. I have a 4-channel VCA here. Those guys all kind of work through the modulation stuff to kind of bring things to where I want. Next to Oct, I have a Step 8. Great little sequencer and sampling register thing. You can do all sorts of really crazy things with it. Maybe slightly underused in my rack. Next to Geranalog Step 8, I have the Morph 4. The Morph 4 is a quad VCA with a morph input, which will kind of like crossfade between them. You can do some really cool stuff in audio rate with the Morph 4. Morph 4 is awesome. Along with my little Geranalog collection here, I have the Fold 6, and Fold 6 will do a lot of great distortion type stuff. And then I have a little 2 HP Link 2, which is just a mult. And then we're kind of getting back over to let's see, we had the Step 8, we have the Morph 4, the Link 2, and then next to that we have the dual attenuator from Bifaco, which is just a offset and attenuation as well, but it's one of those ones that's in the weird like 5 HP, which is a stupid HP, but nice little module, and it pairs along with the instrument interface right next to it. And yep, going more to the right, we'll get into the Pittsburgh modular system interface mixer, but before we hit that, we have a quad VCA from IntelliGel. So we have this quad VCA here and a quad VCA here, and the Morph 4 can do VCA duty here. So quite a lot of VCAs here. All right, getting up into the next row. Row 3 starts with the Pulp Logic breath control module, which is what I use for breath mainly. I've talked about that in a couple of the other streams, but yeah, it's modified. I removed the low pass filter on the CV for breath, so I can get more articulation out of it, but that's great. Let's see, maths, standard. Wogglebug, a lot of weirdness, which again is kind of underutilized in my rack, but sometimes when you want weird stuff, Wogglebug does great. The Miso veils, and then when I get into my little bit of modal synthesis stuff from Mutable Instruments clones, so I have a 2 HP buffered mult here, and then I get into the Elements clone, Atom, and then I have a Rings. So those are my 2 primary modal synthesis guys, and then over to the right, I have 2 modules from Blue Lantern, which are the Brad's clones, whatever. And then right next to those guys, I have 2 chainsaws from Acid Rain. The Acid Rain chainsaws are awesome super saws and really good. All right, and coming off of the Brad's clones, I have a low pass gate here, a dual low pass gate, and then the copy stereo mixer, the stereo sum, and those all work kind of together because I'll do a lot of things in stereo with the 2 chainsaws or the rings or the atom or whatnot, feed it through the low pass gate and into this kind of like stereo mixer here, maybe with some feedbacky stuff or some effects, and then I have a stereo filter here, which is the Bastille Ickery, which is one of my favorite stereo filters I have, and it's phenomenal. Highly recommend that filter. You can do so much cool stuff with it. And then we're starting to get into effects. I have an Endorphins Milky Way, a Starlab, and a Strymon Magneto. So those are kind of my 3 big effects guys here that work really well. And then down below I still have the Timizora from Chaos down in my little rack. Yep, so I have 2 chainsaws, and the reason for that is because the Symphonian chord output can do 4 outputs and then a bass, right? But the chainsaws only have 3 CV inputs, not 4. So what I can do is run bass into both of them. So the root note will go into both, and then the root 3rd, 5th, 7th will be split up between the 2, and then I'll combine the 2 outputs together in stereo, and have some nice chordal stuff that I can do from it. But the point of the 2 chainsaws is so I can do my 4-part polyphony from the Symphonian. I guess paraphony, since I'm not actually doing a full envelope for each one. But yeah, chainsaw is one of my favorite modules for super saw type stuff. It's great. It's absolutely phenomenal. All right, we already talked about Mutable Instruments ears, and then I have the Berglund Instruments Numar, which is my primary wind synth module. Talked about that in a couple of my streams in the past. And then I have a Steiner Microcon. This one in particular means a lot to me, as Sean, I already talked to you about, because Niall Steiner and a couple of the other Steiners are the ones who built these modules here, and Niall Steiner actually calibrated this one and sent it to me. So, like when you hear about like the Steiner Parker filters and all that, that's from Niall Steiner, and he helped build this module in particular before sending it over to me. So that thing's awesome. All right, and next to that, I have the Filter of Crows from Pittsburgh Modular, and that's a high gain input version, 8 HP version of the original Crow module, which is kind of a crazy filter with an absolutely huge amount of gain and a crazy resonant circuit. Awesome little filter. It is only mono though, not a stereo filter. And then next to him, I do have. Yeah, I could have been zoomed in. Filter Crows, Steiner Microcon, and then we get into the 4MS Ensemble Oscillator, which is just an awesome module. I use it a lot of the time for droney stuff, like I'm doing right now. And next to that is the Bafako Bandit, which is the 4-band spectral mixer modulator guy, which can do awesome things for droney things too, and can like take out lows and mix them with other things, or take out the mids and I don't know, you can do crazy stuff with the Bandit. It's great. And then my very first module that I ever got is the Lifeforms SV1 Bravo. Yep, just a great all-around subtractive synth, and he, like I said, was my first module, but it's just a great all-in-one synth voice. Next to that, I have the local florist. And I sometimes switch him out with the Pittsburgh Modular Toad here, which is a phaser. So the local florist is a flanger guy, and the Toad is a phaser. So those are kind of my two Pittsburgh Modular effects modules that I really enjoy. And then we get into the Strymon Magneto, and next to him is actually the Dope for Reverb. The Dope for Reverb has a spring reverb tank, and that reverb tank lives inside the rack and it's mounted in there, but it's an actual reverb tank. Yeah, so I don't know. Spring reverbs aren't for everybody, but it's great. Yeah, Sean, the Newmar is great. You do such good stuff in the box, though, with all your VSTs. I'd be hesitant to say that you should get into your rack at all. But, I mean, look at me. Your rack got out of control real fast. All right, and getting on to my last row here. The top left module, again, was the Befacco input. Next, I have Bleep Bloop 2000, which is... Honestly, I got it just for... the front panel, right? I mean, look at this thing. It's ridiculous, right? It's got nipple knobs and a splarf penis, right? Like, it's great. Love this thing. But it's basically 4 oscillators that come in and have like some cross modulation type stuff and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't track a volt per octave, but you can do some weird audio bleepy bloopy things. So if you really just want to make some weird noises, that's the thing for you. Next, I have a tuner also from Berglund Instruments. And this module is great because it has a pass-through for the audio and has a visual indicator here with little rotating LEDs for how well you're in tune. So if you are a strobe tuner guy or just really want a visual tuner, this guy is really awesome, right? So 4 HP, has 3 inputs, and you can cycle through the inputs, and it's just input to output, and it's a great little tuner. Next to him, I have a 4 HP Giraffe mixer. He's just a little 4 HP mixer from Pittsburgh Modular. And next to him is the Tan H from Instro, which does some like linear to exponential stuff, which is really good overdrive for like guitar, but also does really good for taming feedback loops and trying to get things right on the edge of feedback. This thing is great. Next is the Pittsburgh Modular Flamingo. And this was a very limited run Safari module. And it does center clipping, which is an odd concept. Center clipping, if you have a waveform that comes up and down, will actually clip out the middle, starting from the midline and come out. So if you have a sine wave, for instance, it rectifies just the middle portion. So you might have like a blip and then a straight line and then a blip down, straight line, blip. And you can do those independently from the top or the bottom. And then also it has an auto gain circuit. So you can do some like really crazy distortion things, but it's center clipping, which is a very odd concept versus just rectifying. Center clipping. All right, and next to him is another Pittsburgh Modular module. Obviously, I have a lot of Pittsburgh Modular stuff, and that's basically because when I got my Lifeforms SV1 Bravo, I was very happy with it. So I definitely support them, right? So this one is the back controller, and it is a low-pass gate simulator, meaning it does low-pass gate type response for a filter, but you have control over the release time on it, and it has a pretty good resonance. So you can do some really nice plucky things. Next to him is Monsoon, which is a Clouds clone. Super fun. Everybody needs the clouds, right? Rings in the clouds is kind of the thing. Next module is Tabor, which is a beautiful module. My camera doesn't pick it up well, but the blues and the LEDs in person of this thing are awesome. And when it gets into some of the modes, it can do some really pretty things. I don't know if we can... The cameras don't do it justice. It's such a beautiful module in person. But honestly, this thing just is a atrocious sounding, dirty, weird noisemaker. Which is so good for just like random texture stuff or sending it through modal synthesis stuff or whatever. And all the knobs kind of do things, but nothing ever really tracks well. It's one of those very weird Eurorack modules that's like, I'm not really sure what to do with it, but you kind of find places to put it, and it does some weird things that are just super fun. Then I have another Molt, and the DPW switch and Zero module, and these guys are super fun for audio rate modulation. In this case, they're just a one in, and it's just a switch that you can like switch between with a latch in this case, or non-latching momentary press. So a very big utility module, but with DPW, the DPW, if you look into it, is a very cool module, which is a single bit D-latch shift register, which can basically, with the DPW, do audio rate switching at a specific level, so you can have clickless transitions between two waveforms at a different frequency, which is, it sounds really complicated, but it basically allows you to like mix two waveforms without getting that crazy tearing clipping sound. And also do all sorts of weird clocking type things that you can do with it. Those two modules together, super fun. All right, and back when I was trying to do some polyphonic stuff, I have 3 Pittsburgh Bondular primary oscillators, and these things are such good oscillators, right? They have, I think, 4 outputs. They have the sine, the saw. Oh, they have a lot more actually. The sine, the saw, the blade, the pulse, fragments, and timbre. So timbre will be a waveform, a folded waveform. Fragments is a sample and a hold circuit, so you'll get like aliased down sampling type response to it. Blade will take a saw and go from one saw to a double saw at an octave, but it has a weird crossover, so it sounds really cool. And then it has a couple buttons that allow for some like harmonic changes and all that kind of stuff, and attenuators for all the CVs. You can do some crazy FM stuff between these 3, and especially when combined with the SV1 Bravo, is super, super good. Yeah, regrettably, I want to say that this whole thing is probably more like 15, which I kind of hate to say, right? Like, yeah, it's a lot. I have another giraffe mixer here. So the giraffe is another 4 HP mixture module, and then I have an after later audio Popple, and Popple is a ripple clone, but it's a stereo ripple, which is honestly a very clean, nice sounding filter, but it has, I don't know, very little character besides being just a really nice filter. But it's great when you need it, and it has the added benefit that it has modulation over resonance, which is nice. And then you can also have low pass, band pass, and high pass outputs from each, and modulate the left and right frequency modulations separately. So the Popple is really good. Yep, and then we get up to the very top, which is the Wong vector space, and then next to that is a triple sloth clone, and then I have this little 4 HP guy here is a LED controller, so I can control my overhead lights. But not only can I like change it with the knobs, right? The LEDs above me and this guy here can be audio rate modulated, or CV modulated rather, right? So you know, when you really want to stroke somebody out. But you can do cool things like put this to breath control or something like that, right? So now, if I was to duplicate this out to my breath control module, breath, right? So you can do all sorts of cool shit with the Dope4 module here. And I think that's about all of my modules, Quasar. Let's see. George asks. Yeah, I mean, all these modules are obtained over quite a few years now, and mostly one module at a time within a budget of hobby budget per month, right? So, yeah, it's definitely not something that, you know, I go and grab, you know, hundreds of HP of modules in one buy. It's definitely slow grown over time, so... And I think that's everything. That's 11 o'clock. I made it just barely, Quasar, you know? Yeah, we made it. So if you have any other questions, let me know. Like I said, I'm an open book for all this stuff. I do have more modules than I have in my rack right now. But I would say that 90% of my modules are in this rack, and I don't have a plan of building up another rack or getting my other older rack out and filling it up. Mainly because of my space limitations, but I think this is also a good size without getting bigger. So I might get through and replace some of these modules, like the Woggle Bug is one that I wouldn't mind swapping out, and a couple other ones. I don't know, it's kind of hard once you start getting attached to modules, it's kind of hard to say which ones you want to bring in and out, but it's great. And Paul, yeah, no problem for this walkthrough. I know it's a little bit in depth, and like I said, if you're not a Eurorack guy, some of this is probably not so interesting, but for all the Eurorack snobs out there, hopefully this is interesting for you guys. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out here that's way too spendy, right? Like I said, I try and keep it within a monthly budget, and honestly, over the last year, I've bought very little modules. Just a couple. I think the Bafako Bandit was probably my newest one that I got more recently. Yeah. So, any other questions? Otherwise, we'll end it here. I will note that I don't do much VCV, right? I don't find VCV very fun. Not like I do modular in the rack. So. Yeah, Sean, and since you do kind of the mono synth stuff with just the woodwind. Whoa, I had some kind of audio blip there. I wonder if I've been running too long. Anyway, with you running just a mono synth from your WX7 most of the time, I could see how the VST, especially when you're just like not doing a whole lot of hand-on twiddling stuff, right? That it'd be great. So. I wouldn't necessarily want to jump into hardware either if I was just playing WinSynth all the time, and you shred the WinSynth, so don't feel bad there at all. And obviously, my setup with the MIDI Fighter Twister, the Linstrument, and all this is also kind of unique and plays into my setup here, which I'm really enjoying. So, and of course, I have my spaceship now, and I need to figure out how to integrate my spaceship into more things and get this guy running a little bit better, because while it's usable as is, I want to do a little bit better with it, and yeah, it's fun. Alright guys, I'm gonna go. I think my wife is probably irritated and I do have to get up early, so I'm gonna let you guys go. It was good talking to you, and I will see you guys later. All right.